Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart here. And we're on to the executive spotlight portion of our show. We have Kerry Barrett from Kerry Barrett Consulting. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is always such a fun time. You guys are the best.
Yes. So who do you have with you today?
Well, I have the lovely and talented Rachel Durkan. She is the president of Paradigm Marketing and Design. And this comes with a disclaimer. I use them. I think they're amazing. And I think Rachel is fantastic, but I'll let her introduce herself and her business to you and to the audience. Hey, Rachel.
Hello, Kerry, and everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So as Kerry mentioned, I'm Rachel Durkan. My company is Paradigm Marketing and Design. We are a web branding and marketing agency. We specialize in working with two different industries, one being nonprofit, and the second being anything that has a complex sale. So if you're not selling a widget you're going to sell 10,000 of in a day, and it requires a human to close the deal or some sort of professional service in order to explain something to your audience in an intelligent way, we can help you with your marketing strategy.
She makes even me sound smart, which is like quite a feat.
That's not true. You're very good on your feet.
So she's like, don't say that, Kerry. Say this instead, right? We'll be smart no matter what the challenge is. So Rachel has built this incredibly successful business, and she has a team of people that work around her. But I think one of the cool things that she's very real about, like, in the beginning, it was a struggle, and this is what I learned, and this is what, kept me up at night, and here's where we are now. And they've had enormous success over the past 12 months. You want to dive a little bit into that?
Our success or my terrible fears?
All of the above. Your terrible first few years, which I'm still going through, and the success you found, especially over the past 12 months, which is remarkable. She embodies the P word. And by that, I mean pivot.
Yeah. So we're about, maybe 10 or somewhere between 10 and 12 years old now. There's a difference between when the government thinks that I started this company and when I actually feel like I actually started this company, because I was paying taxes on it earlier than when it was actually taking off. But so talking about the last 12 months during COVID, there was a huge P word that had to happen across the board. And I actually think, and this sounds terrible, it was one of the best things that ever happened to our company, because we were getting complacent. As we were growing like a steady pace. But as I brought on new talent, as we had more people join us, things became a little bit too easy. And it wasn't kind of, back to the 2-year mark or the 3-year mark when everything was hard all the time. And there's nothing like a little bit of fear to get your operations in order, get your processes in order, make some changes in order to grow quickly. So, that fear, Nancy mentioned earlier, being friends with fear, that's exactly what really motivated me to keep moving.
Well, what were, I guess, going then back prior to this past year, what were those big moments that you perhaps had failure in and then you learned from?
There were so many. Let's think. So I think one of them early on, honestly, was this concept of head trash. So you're always, as an entrepreneur, I think you become very comfortable being afraid. Now I'm always afraid, but I'm immune to it. Or, as they say, bravery is not the absence of fear, it's just overcoming it. I think I've become much braver. So I remember hiring my first employee and being terrified, like, oh my gosh, somebody's mortgage depends on this business being successful. That was terrifying. But now I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, go ahead and hire them and give them benefits. It's kind of I've become numb to it, but then also confident. But something that someone said to me once, it was a business coach. He said, Rachel, you can't get to second base with your foot still on first. And I tell myself that advice every single time something scary happens. You have to take a calculated leap of faith. You have to move forward. So some of the specific things that I have found fearful was certainly every time I had to ever up level, every time you have to hire, every time you have to buy office space, every time you're committing to something that's going to be an amount of money that you're not sure you're going to have later. Mm-hmm. I would also say some of the things that were fearful. So I started this business at 25. I basically had no idea what I was doing. I still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just really good at figuring things out, I think. But and this might be anybody, but there's insecurities for everyone. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made because of my own fear and my lack of confidence at the time was I didn't ever want to hire people smarter than me. I wanted to make sure that I knew what was going on and that people were coming to me for advice, and I didn't want anybody to see, what was under the hood.
Don't look at the cracks. Like they're not.
Yeah, exactly. Like look at the makeup. Don't look at me when I first wake up in the morning. Like I've got everything organized. And when I finally realized, it was probably year 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4, actually, it took a little while. When I finally realized that I need to hire people smarter than me and surround myself with people smarter than me, that's when the business took off. I make it a point now to never be the smartest person in the room. I want to be like the least smartest person in the room on something, because having people smarter than you and bringing them together and getting them to look towards a common goal is exactly how you're going to get your business moving, whether it's contractors or employees or strategic partnerships. You always want to be the least smartest person in the room.
Then those are words to grow on people. Okay.
So I'll hop in and ask a question here, just out of, I really love what you're saying, Rachel, because it's a very practical view of what it's like to be a CEO. And I can empathize a lot with a lot of your comments. And sometimes I find it interesting how people, especially people who aren't so used to the business world, they talk about their passion. And I think you have to do something that you love, but you're not going to love doing it every day. And what you get into it for in the beginning is different from where you are now and the types of things that you have to do. So I was just wondering your take on those thoughts.
That's such a good point. So I have a background in marketing. I have an MBA. I worked in pharma. I worked in nonprofit. I didn't have any web development or graphic design experience. And I ended up going back to school for web and graphic design. And I really, really loved it. And I started this business. It actually started as a website company because I liked designing websites. The last time I designed a website was a very long time ago. Now actually when I code, my developers like, stop it. You code like an old person. You're not allowed to do it anymore. Like, I actually get yelled at because it's been like 5 or 6 years since I've been I've updated my coding skills. So, I started the business because I loved something. And when you're an entrepreneur, you have to end up doing what the business needs. And I still love what I do every day, but it's very different what I did last year. It's very different than I did 5 years ago. It's very different than what I did when I started this business. And I had coaches, you'll hear me talk about coaches and masterminds a lot because I'm constantly trying to surround myself with people, like I said, smarter than I am. But a coach once said to me, think of your role in your business like you have a Venn diagram. That's right? When you have the 3 circles. Okay.
Yep.
The 3 circles.
A smart word though. You used the smart word there.
The smart word. Good. So it wasn't the wrong one. So think of your business, your role in your business. You have a Venn diagram, and in the one circle is what the business needs. And in the second circle is what you're good at. And in the third circle is what you like doing. Now the goal is to always be in the center, right? Doing something that requires all 3 of those things. Now, when you start your business, you can't do that. You have to do all of it. You don't have a choice. But as I've grown, my goal is to always be right in the middle. I only want to do what I'm good at. I only want to do what I like. I want to do what the business needs. Now, every now and then, and usually when there's like a major growth, when we have major growing pains or a major level up, or we're making a major shift or acquiring someone or whatever, I have to get out of that comfort zone and that circle, and that's okay. But you always want to make an effort to hire around that and stay in that circle as best you can. And so your job will evolve. It went from designing and coding every day to marketing consulting, to being a manager, to having to deal with HR compliance and employment law in 12 different states, to, the next thing and the next thing. So really you have to just make sure that you're adjusting your work. You're not going to do what you initially loved, but if you're passionate about the business as a whole and the people you work with, you're always going to love what you do.
Yeah.
So that's great. Kerry, we have time for one more question.
Well, my next question was going to be, Rachel, give me your sort of top 3 tips for entrepreneurs. You gave one there. Can you give us 2 more?
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about this. So I think the first one is definitely, I'm going to repeat it because it changed my life, is you can't get to second base with your foot still on first. You have to take calculated risks. The Venn diagram, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. But then I'm also going to say, always look at what you can do differently. So I always tell my team this. You might have like a challenging client or a bad situation, and it's really easy to say, well, that didn't work out because of them, or that didn't work out because of this happened. And I really believe that I can only change what I can change. I can only change my behavior. So when something goes wrong in our company, we usually do a meeting. We're not pointing fingers. We're not blaming. We're saying, what could I or we have done differently? Because you can only look back and figure out how you can change a circumstance for the next time. So what I would leave you with is always look at what you can change, evaluate things that went wrong and things that went right, and look at what you did to control the situation, because you can always adjust your behaviors, but you can't control everything else. So that would be my last tip.
Perfect. And a disclaimer, she's never the dumbest person in the room.
I try to be in the middle somewhere.
I think she's quite smart.
So Rachel,
I still do think she is. Thank you, Rachel. You're awesome.
yeah.
Thank you.
And where can we find you, Rachel? And where can we find you, Kerry?
Rachel, go first.
Okay, great. So our website is Paradigm, PARADIGM-MD for marketing and design.com. And my email is rjdurkan@paradigm-md.com.
And my website is Kerry, Kerry, Barrett, Barrett. Surprisingly, lots of people don't know how to spell that. KerryBarrettConsulting.com. You can email me, Kerry@KerryBarrettConsulting.com. And you can also find me on all of the social media platforms. Right now, I'm trying to grow my YouTube audience, so feel free to subscribe. That would be great. Kerry Barrett Consulting.
Yes, definitely go to Kerry's YouTube, because she is really a dynamic speaker and it's fun to watch her speak. So anyway, you are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710, the voice of New York. If you've missed anything so far, we've just had a wonderful chat with lots of great advice for entrepreneurs. Our podcast will be out tomorrow, and we have a YouTube channel too. So we'll be right back.